Dungeons and Dragons, Satan's Game, and a Saturday morning cartoon from the 80s with a growing cult following. Because it's evil. Dungeons and Dragons, the animated series, aired on CBS, lasting for 3 short seasons spanning from 1983 to 1985. It was produced directly by TSR, the company that owns the game, with additional help from Marvel Productions. It was even co-produced by the game's creator, Gary Gygax.
Greetings! It's a pleasure to meet you.
Of course, it used many assets from the popular tabletop game, though some things needed to be changed, and we'll get into that. But it featured many new elements, including our main heroes, a group of kids who were unwillingly transported from their world via a Dungeons and Dragons carnival ride. Why isn't that a thing? Do you know how many nerds would line up to ride that? Not sure why they did it like this, though. A carnival ride seems a bit far-fetched. Don't know why they weren't just, you know, playing the game. Anyway, they show up in the magical realm of Dungeons and Dragons, and each are given a class and a magical item to help them on their journey. Sheila, the thief, receives a cloak that turns her invisible, and maybe makes her intangible, I think? I'm not really sure. Her younger brother Bobby, the barbarian, gets Bam Bam's club from the Flintstones, which can shatter anything he hits with it, and create small earthquakes when he strikes the ground. Yeah, let's give the youngest member the most destructive weapon. I'm sure that's fine. Diana, the Acrobat, which is not a Dungeons and Dragons class. At least I don't think it is. She gets a magic staff that she does flips and stuff with, I guess. The magician Presto, yes, that's his name, gets a magic hat that he can pull items out that can help them, but most of the time it's just for comedic effect.
Alakazam! Abracadation! I cast you away by teleportation! Huh? It's for you! It's your mom!
Eric, the Cavalier, gets a shield of protection that can block almost anything. He's also an insufferable twat. More on him later. Finally, Hank the Ranger, who gets a magic bow that shoots energy arrows, which makes it arguably the best item, though it's a bit inconsistent because sometimes it just kinda hits things, sometimes it makes giant explosions, sometimes he uses it to grab stuff, and sometimes he can swing on his energy arrows like a rope. If it worked better as a weapon, I'd say it's kind of OP. He's made the de facto leader of the team because he has great hair. I don't know. When they arrive, they run into a baby unicorn named Uni. She's voiced by Frank Welker, who makes her sound like Slimer from the real Ghostbusters doing an impression of a goat. I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure that's not how a pony sounds. The kids are called here to fight Venger, an evil wizard who controls the realm and has headgear that'll drive people with OCD insane. He's voiced by Peter Cullen.
And you will not cast another spell tonight. I have the wizard's hat. Hand over the rest of your objects of power.
So I guess this is an alternate universe where Optimus Prime is an evil wizard and Megatron is a baby unicorn. I do love multiverse theory. It makes for a good thought experiment. Like, can you imagine there's an alternate universe out there where I sat in this very spot and reviewed recent cartoons? That would be weird. Not to worry, because they get help, sort of, from Dungeon Master. This little guy that shows up from time to time that gives them advice, usually in the form of a riddle that does help, but can either be really vague or so specific it relies on them being in the right place at the right time.
But beware, for only beauty can defeat the eye of the beholder.
How did Dungeon Master think beauty could defeat the beholder?
That's it! The flower! Sir John! The flower I gave you! Show the beholder the flower!
Boy, it's a good thing that worked out. It's a wonder they've been able to survive as long as they have. I'm not sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing. On one hand, it's kind of dickish of him to throw these kids into a dangerous world with the bare minimum to survive, and basically tells them, here's some things that might be important. Figure it out, geniuses. And then he disappears. On the other hand, the best parts of the show is watching the kids pull through from a tough situation. They have to persevere, work together, and often think outside the box, which is basically how Dungeons & Dragons is supposed to be played. At least in theory, that's how it's supposed to work. But that's pretty much how the show goes. The kids go on some quest to either help someone or follow a lead to a portal home, which usually gets messed up somehow, leaving the audience frustrated every week. And along the way, they run into all kinds of villains and monsters from the Dungeons & Dragons game in all their horrifying glory. Funny thing about that, considering how many restrictions were put on this show. So, have you noticed how their magic items are either not weapons or not used like weapons? Well, the show was deemed too violent and things had to be scaled back. So, no bladed weapons, no real arrows, and no actually hitting anyone or anything. In fact, sometimes they went out of their way to not hit something no matter how bad the danger was.
Buzz off, you big bozo! Bobby, look out!
That monster is trying to kill us! We need to stop it! But we don't want to hurt it. Also, remember how I said Eric was an insufferable twat? Well, him being like that was intentionally added so the audience would dislike him and side more with the other characters. So he's constantly complaining, the fall guy for almost every comedic bit, and of course, telling lots of bad jokes.
How many dwarves does it take to change a light bulb? None! They can't reach it! They're not troll enough! You suck!
The show was even forced to put a disclaimer at the beginning of every episode. All in the name of being family friendly, right? Funny because there was still lots of danger and disturbing imagery in most of the episodes. I'm surprised how much they got away with considering the restrictions. It's shocking. I've never seen a show push the envelope so much and yet be so restricted. It's kind of an anomaly. And keep in mind, this was '83. There wasn't much else like this show at the time. And it was a little bit before Hasbro showed up to traumatize your childhood with stuff like Transformers and Inhumanoids. You know, now that I think about it, a lot of '80s cartoons were kind of messed up. But that's why '80s kids are the best. We stared down danger right in the face and never looked back, no matter how scared we were. Made us tough. Speaking of which, I do have to mention how cool this show looks. The setting looks gritty and harsh and filled with all kinds of things from the game. It must have been cool for fans of D&D at the time, seeing all these characters they've only read about in books come to life. Although at this point I should mention that I've never actually played Dungeons & Dragons. Most of my knowledge comes from either research or talking to people I know that play. That being said, I'm told some of the monsters weren't represented very well, like the Beholder, which I've heard is notoriously difficult to defeat, and the kids just deflated it with a flower. Must also be weak to plot armor. Oh, and again, this was co-created by Marvel, so they threw in a few references, including a cameo from Man-Thing. Or at least a monster that looks like him. Kinda. You know, at one point they meet a guy with a magic hammer. They should have had him dressed up like Thor. Missed opportunity. They also meet these Ewok Care Bear things that I'm pretty sure aren't from Dungeons & Dragons. It's like they wandered into a completely different Saturday morning cartoon. Like I said before, some of the best moments from the show come from watching the team work together. They're all very likable despite some obvious flaws. It was also interesting learning about their lives before they came here. There wasn't a lot of characterization, but they did drop some subtle info here and there. Eric likes to boast about how rich his family is, because of course he does, but briefly mentions that his father isn't always there for him.
Can't we stay? Ramood's awfully nice.
Yeah, he's the next best thing to having a real dad.
Are you kidding? He's better than my dad ever was.
I also noticed Sheila and Bobby are very close, and Bobby is very protective of his big sister, which might imply they might not have a good home life. Even the items they use seem to reflect their personalities or interests, like it's revealed that Diana is a gymnast and uses her pole to flip around a lot.
Nice catch. Hey, you're pretty good.
Me? But you were magnificent.
Nah.
Hey, Kosar, don't let her kid you. Diana's made first place in the state gymnastic finals 2 years straight.
Still not an acrobat, though. By the way, can we take a moment and appreciate Hank helping out Diana with a boy she likes? I think I'm beginning to see why he's the leader. We find out that Presto likes to do magic tricks.
No, it's real. We're lost. Tell our parents.
I'm sure. Look, I'll see you in the morning at school, okay? Then you can show me another one of your dumb card tricks, eh, Presto?
So I guess Presto is a nickname, and they never say what his real name is. And of course, Bobby, being the youngest and most energetic and headstrong, gets the big destructive club.
All right! Leave her to me! Bobby, don't! She's indestructible!
Apparently, he went to the Leroy Jenkins School of Battle Strategy. The thing is, most people who watch this show rarely get past the first season, and will judge it by the flaws a lot of shows have at the beginning. Fortunately, I'm not most people, and I watched the entire thing. And I can say for sure that things did seem to improve as the series went on. There was more danger, more interesting episodes, and even a bit of growth in some of the characters. Hank had to make tough decisions, Presto's magic seemed to work a bit better, and even Eric stepped up a bit. He still complained every now and then, but there were a few moments where he really shined. He still proved loyal to his friends and even took charge of the group when they all thought Hank was dead. And being the one who wants to go home the most, whenever they had the opportunity to do so, something would usually prevent them, and he'd always do the right thing and head back. This brings me to the show's biggest flaw. So the kids are constantly looking for a way home, and Dungeon Master sends them on quests to find some magic or a portal or something that'll take them back. Then something will keep them from going, but usually someone they meet will benefit from it. Rinse and repeat. But Dungeon Master actually had a reason for bringing them to this realm. It's implied several times that Venger is really Dungeon Master's son who had been corrupted by evil magic, and he needs the kids to help make him good again. Do you see the problem here? If their purpose for being here is to help save his son, then why does he keep leading them to ways they can get home? This is like a cruel joke. Why doesn't he just tell them the truth? It's like in Samurai Jack when he keeps trying to go home but gets stopped, except that's what he's supposed to be doing. He needs to go back to the past to stop Aku. He wasn't being led around by a misleading little troll. What would happen if they actually made it back home? His plans would be ruined. Or, in a more likely scenario, one of them gets killed. It's even revealed later on that other people have come here from the real world, even through the same carnival ride. Who knows how many there have been and ended up dying here? You got blood on your hands there, DM. What makes things worse is the series is incomplete. 28 episodes were planned, but only 27 were fully produced. However, there's a reading of the script of the final episode in the DVD set that mostly wraps things up. And I even found a video on YouTube that uses a fan-made comic as a visual aid for the audio. So if you want some closure for the series, I'd recommend looking that up. Speaking of episodes, before we end, let's talk about a few that I thought stood out. In episode 4, they run into a wizard that's stealing the horns of unicorns and kidnaps Uni to steal her powers as well.
Now you shall add to my power.
With this magic, I shall become the world's most powerful brony! But Venger shows up and puts a stop to all this.
I must thank you, Kerek, for keeping the unicorn horns. For keeping them safe for me.
I think Venger is in cahoots with Tyrek. In episode 20, the kids finally grow frustrated with always looking for a way home only to be met with disappointment. So they decide to end Venger once and for all. They even lose their patience with Dungeon Master. Can't say I blame them. They ultimately get him trapped, but they choose to not kill him. This was one of the episodes deemed inappropriate since the kids contemplated killing their enemy. But I think that's a load of crap since they end up not doing it because they would end up no better than he was, and I think that's an important thing for a kids show. This was also one of the episodes that connected the storyline of Venger being Dungeon Master's son.
Rise, my son.
Probably would have been a good storyline if they had the opportunity to finish it. In episode 22, an evil being gets unleashed that's even more powerful than Venger and Dungeon Master, and it's wreaking havoc across the realm.
Maybe we should...
Put the dice away before I take them away.
They regroup in the underworld and decide to join forces to try and stop it, but when they return to the surface, it's disappeared.
Gone to wreak terror and destruction on other worlds. Still, we may have little time.
Until what?
Until he returns.
Yeah, he's just gone off to destroy the universe, and it's never brought up again. I'm sure that'll work itself out. Alright, how about some more controversy? In episode 26, Venger finds a way to reach into the past and take people from different eras of Earth's history. He's doing this to find a very specific type of bad guy.
I require a warrior from a very specific time. A time when their world was torn by war.
This is going exactly where you think it's going. So yeah, he brings a World War II German pilot to their world. They don't say exactly what he is, but it's pretty obvious what he is. And I'm not going to say it, just in case YouTube demonetizes me. However, this particular soldier wasn't happy with how things were being run back home and sees this as an opportunity to start over. So he ends up helping the kids stop Venger in the end. What's interesting is he's kind of based off of a real person.
Listen, Mr.
Müller. Josef Müller.
While there was a Josef Müller at the time, he wasn't a pilot, but rather a politician who was part of the resistance in Germany. So it's partially correct. A for effort, I suppose? Now for what might be my favorite episode. In episode 12, the kids run into these young children who say Venger has stolen their elder as well as their ship. And I'm not talking about a boat.
It's over there.
Wow, a spaceship!
I didn't know they had spaceships in this world.
We're not from this world. Our ship crashed here.
Yeah, they're aliens. You know, I've seen other people's reviews of this show. Why does nobody talk about this episode? They just decided to throw aliens into the fantasy world of Dungeons and Dragons. Who does that? You're crossing the genres. You never cross the genres. There were a lot of other good episodes, but this video's gone on long enough. Dungeons and Dragons is a flawed show that never got its proper ending, but the characters were likable and memorable, the designs were cool, and the episodes are still very engaging. It's a show that was ahead of its time, which explains why it met with so much resistance. It's a shame there wasn't even much in the way of tie-in merchandise other than the game. There was an advanced Dungeons & Dragons action figure line at the time with a few characters from the game that were also featured in the show, but the kids themselves never got proper action figures. However, they got some PVC figures released exclusively in Spain for some reason, which means now they're very expensive. So if anyone finds them cheap at a flea market or something, get them immediately. And then send them to me. I feel like this show could greatly benefit from a reboot. The game is as popular as it's ever been, the show even still gets referenced in popular media all the time, and in the game Baldur's Gate 2 you can actually see portraits of Hank and Bobby as Easter eggs. So I think introducing this to a new audience could be very easy. Unfortunately, because this was produced by Marvel, most of the rights are now in the hands of Disney. And just like with a lot of stuff they've acquired, they're doing nothing with it. Another piece of ripe media that people like left to rot in the Disney vault. But for now, I'd say this show is still worth a watch. And maybe someday we'll get to see the kids go on adventures again. You know, it's a shame. Most other adaptations of Dungeons & Dragons don't usually work out so well. And unfortunately, next time, we'll be looking at another one. I said I was no longer going to tease the next review in these videos, but this time I gotta make an exception.
Let's do this.